In the original version of this film, it opened with shepherds sitting in the fields, and that the star came by behind them. And they're sitting talking, saying, I like sheep. Oh, I love sheep. Yeah, all sheep. Yeah, not all. Well, most sheep. Yeah, I love sheep. Yeah, they're so fun, aren't they? And these shepherds are just boringly talking on about sheep and how much they love sheep, and it's nighttime. And behind them, this huge star comes. And then you see on the hillside this great light illumined, and it's clearly the other shepherds being visited by the Spirit of God. And they never see anything at all. They just carry on talking about sheep being wonderful. Yes, I love them in the springtime when you're lambing, and there's angels are in the sky, and behind them as all this is going on. And then the lights finally go out, and they just go on and they turn around, and they've never seen anything at all. That's like the theme of the movie set really there, which is that things going on at the same time as great historical events are going on. Someone's hoovering the floor, you know, someone's vacuuming. There's other people who don't notice grass historical moments are happening. And that got cut because it was a little long. It was about 5 minutes of stuff. You can watch most films for about 10 minutes and 15 minutes, then up to an hour. And then about an hour you might find yourself looking at the watch saying, I wonder which way this is going or whether it's worth staying with. You know, and that is a function of narrative. And when one gets later on and older in life, you study the form. And that's always where they say, you know, the plot point, Act 2, should be kicking forward to drive you to know where you're going. And in a Python film, it's very hard to know where you're going.
I think of all God's creatures, sheep have the best offspring.
Oh, yes. Terrific animals, terrific.
Yeah, they're so sure-footed.
And quick-witted.
Are they quick-witted?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they're quite quick-witted.
And always cheerful.
Well, except at shearing.
The great thing about Python is it's such a big committee that somebody has some idea and is unsatisfied, eventually will kind of keep saying, well, we haven't got this right yet. And there's always somebody who nags and says, let's keep going. And usually you get to a space you wouldn't have got to. Now, most comedy films don't have that luxury. There's either one writer or one director or one comedian. So they don't have this constant nagging by 6 people to shift it into the right ground. And that's true of Holy Grail, that when the director's usually so tired too and knocked, he's seen it so often, he's dead to the material. Whereas what we could do is we could come in, the 2 Terrys would have been editing, we come in comparatively fresh, see it as a sort of fresh audience through fresh eyes, and be able to actually positively suggest things. So afterwards, we'd always have like a 2-hour deconstruction meeting where it was us saying, rather than the audience telling you, we'd go, look, we're losing them here. What if we did this? What if? And then the what if is the constructive phrase. What if we had a shot? Isn't there a close-up of somebody? The reason they don't laugh is they don't understand that's a joke. There's no close-up to punctuate it. There's no, there's no reaction. So that's the kind of thing a group can do that you can't normally do.
During these films, we did spend a long time cutting them, and then we'd try them out on audiences and then come back and recut them, and you'd say, well, that sequence isn't working quite right there. We're not really seeing what's going on, or the comedy isn't kind of working quickly enough. It would have been much easier if we'd had the Avid editing facilities. And when you're shooting with an Avid nowadays, when you're editing with an Avid, you wouldn't have that problem, because you call up the bin, that section of the film, and you can see all the shots you've got on the screen. But otherwise, in the old ways, if you're just going from the notes that the continuity lady's taken, it's hopeless.
So they can go down Bethlehem and get drunk. Is it AD yet?
1:15.
Oh, there's a whole other sequence cut, which reminds me, where the pilot's wife is kidnapped. And we had this huge guy playing Pilot's wife, and we all go under the hypercaust, and we pop up in Pilot's palace, and we kidnap Pilot's wife. And it was like a comedy knockabout scene, and that was all cut. In editing, the decisions were usually made after a screening by a sort of committee of us coming in and making suggestions. But ultimately, the responsibility would be the director and the editor. But then we'd test how that would work. So certain scenes were cut. And I think with Brian, for the first time, we actually had scenes to cut. In Holy Grail, what we had was what we got. I mean, we didn't have anything to cut. The budget was so small, and we had so few shooting days. We shot it in 6 weeks that we didn't hardly have enough to make of the length for film. With Brian, for the first time, I don't know what the original length of the original cut was, but we certainly had more material than was necessary.
What happened was Julian Doyle had been one of our producers on The Holy Grail, and through the editing of The Holy Grail, he was the one person who seemed to have kept his head and said, look, this is funny stuff, it's going to work. So Julian was somebody who had a lot of experience in filmmaking, although he'd never actually edited a feature film. But I suggested that it would be a good idea if we got Julian to edit it, since we didn't know another editor. So it's the first film that Julian had edited, and basically it was Julian, myself and Terry Gilliam editing it, and we'd take bits and take sections and edit them, and then the others would look at them and we'd swap them around and all have a go at them until we got a cut that we all agreed on.
Keep the noise down, please! Who's possessed by devils? Try and keep them under control a bit, can't you?
All right, now those with gifts, come forward, please. Incurables, you'll just have to wait for a few minutes. Will you endorse fish? You'll have to speak to Sibyl Francis about endorsements. Don't line up along there. Get 'em in two...
In an odd way, Otto was an intrusion rather than a... It works fine when the space people come in because it's just short enough and mad enough and it's part of the chase to perk you up. But when Otto came in, it was introducing a whole new character. And what was this about? You know, it was coming from left field. And it wasn't adding, it was puzzling. And when we'd always have lots of previews. And so Otto wasn't just cut out of the blue, it was cut because of watching previews and feeling the audience shift and watching. We didn't ever give them questions, you know what I mean? We didn't fill in forms like they do now. But you can feel when you're watching with an audience where they get restless and when they start shifting and nodding off. You can sense that when you watch a film with an audience. And it was always coming back to us that around that point, no matter what we put in there, things were starting to nod. And that's why we'd made some cuts, because often cutting just lets you drive through to the end quicker and they can see which way we're going. And the plot is building. And that made it work better, I think.
Yes, I think you question me.
No.
I can see you do not believe me.
No, I do.
Enough. I prove it to you. Squirt!
It was interesting because when we shot it, it was only 10 days after Jonestown. And it's about a fully trained suicide squad who can commit suicide within 20 seconds. And it was about rampant nationalism and how dangerous that is to all of us in any society. And so Otto was a complete, fascistic figure of the 0th century, whatever that's called, the first century. And there was Otto songs, too. There's about 3 Otto songs which were done about Otto's leaders, following Otto, because he's mad and bad and has a small piece of brain lodged in his skull. I have those on tape somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, this is less sketch format. I mean, and we did make a lot of choices that tried to maintain the narrative at the expense of sketches. The auto scene is one of those, which is a wonderful scene, but it came too late in the film to introduce new characters. I'm never certain whether we were right or wrong, to be honest, because I don't know if our stuff depends on a narrative thrust or just good comic scenes one after another. Always the problem is when you're making a film, over 90 minutes, somewhere in the middle of a comedy film, nothing works. And so we trimmed it down and decided to try to keep the narrative moving. One of the great things in the design was trying to make these costumes where we used the Star of David crossed with a swastika. I thought that was a really interesting design problem, one that would cause offense to a lot of people. But I thought we succeeded, and you only see it at the end of the film. And trying to build uniforms for them was all very strange. We sort of had this strange sort of samurai things made out of reeds, but the helmets had a certain Nazi shape to them. The whole concept of Otto was interesting, where you basically take a radical Jewish revolutionary who has all the same dreams that young Adolf had.
So that's what it was, and it's hard, tough comedy, and it makes a very strong point. But in the end, you'd say, well, do we really want to offend all these people who are going to misunderstand what the point is? Is that really our target in this movie? And it isn't really. The movie's target is really about Christianity and its sects and its followers and its ability to go to war over peace, which is the great irony, Hey, we are the God of peace, and we'll kill you if you don't believe everything we say. So that's the Otto story, and it's all my fault.
Well, I suppose one of the nice things about seeing it so many years after it was made is you forget all the terrible things that went on when you were making it. Although, as I say, when we actually made Life of Brian, it felt like we were on a roller coaster. That I felt everything was going well, and it was 8 weeks of things going right. We didn't really have many disasters. Whereas when we shot The Holy Grail, it was constant disaster, constant panic right from the beginning. Life of Brian was great to shoot. It was more problematical editing it, and again, it took quite a long time to edit and to hone it down and to try and get the scenes to work. But I think we were more confident by the time we were doing Life of Brian, and when we had terrible showings, as we always did, I kept on saying, well, look, our experience from The Holy Grail is that you don't really get a good audience until they've paid to go, and they've paid for their seats. And it seemed to be the case. Once we got a paying audience in, people seemed to enjoy it.
Oh, my God.
He had you there, mate, didn't he? That'll teach you a lesson.
There was a scene, I think, towards the end where Michael sold souvenirs, or crucifixion souvenirs, which was very similar to Harry the Haggler scene, and it was one or the other, and it was considered that that scene was just too close to the end. He wanted to get through to the end.
Well, how about this then? A couple of crosses. One slightly damaged, only very... All right. I'll give you one more chance.